Hey guys, and welcome to my Lich King 25-man heroic guide for Wrath of Lich King Classic. My previous guide videos, if you watched them, were focused around being as short and precise as possible, but for Lich King I feel like I need to make it as in-depth as possible, as I feel like this will be the boss where most people will hit a brick wall and do progression for many weeks. I will do segments for the boss, split up into phases and intermissions, so you can quickly navigate to a specific part of the boss you want to learn more about. In this strategy video guide, I will base it around the strategy used by my guild on progression release. Now just to make it clear, I am not saying this is the one and only way of killing the boss, but it is what works for us and hopefully works for some other people out there. Enough talk about that though, I'll get straight to it. First, I will speak about the composition we use for our Lich King progression. You don't need the composition we use here, but it's what worked for us. I will also upload a video after this showcasing us 24-manning Lich King, showing that you don't need the perfect comp for the boss. Our composition is a Blood DK main tank, a Protection Pella off tank. We use 3 Unholy DKs, 2 Survival Hunters, 1 Fury Warrior, 1 Combat Rogue, 1 Red Pella, 1 Shadow Priest, 1 Feral, 1 Burmy, 1 Demolock, and 5 Affliction Warlocks. Our healing team is 3 Holy Paladins, 2 Disc Priests, and 1 Wrestle Shaman. Having 3 Unholy DKs, 2 Survival Hunters, 1 Fury, and 1 Wretched Pella ensures that the ghouls die at a good pace in phase 1, and having 6 Warlocks and 2 Hunters allows you to skip almost 1/3 of all the Val'kyr spawning in phase 2. We are able to make the enrage timer with 6 healers, so we found no reason not to play it as safe as possible with 6 healers. Playing double Disc Priest ensures power shield on the entire raid for every infest. Also having this many paladins in the raid ensures a raid cooldown for every single infest as well. We found that Blood DK for tanking Lich King and Protection Pella for off tanking yielded the best results. Also having the Blood DK tank allows you to get 10% attack power and 20% melee haste, so you don't have to bring either Enhanced Shaman or Frost DK. If you have any other questions regarding the comp, you can always ask me when I'm live on Twitch or in the comments down below. After launch though, I'll probably have a very limited time to be reading the YouTube comments, so for a faster response, catch me on twitch.tv/TakeNoteTV instead. Now, before you ask, keep in mind, our comp was as optimized as possible for a one-shot on launch. You can kill this boss with basically any comp. This is not a mandatory comp. Now that the comp section is done, let's get straight into the boss fight and start with phase 1. Before phase 1 even starts, we have our Warlocks pre-positioned portals where we want to end Lich King in phase 1, so they get more uptime on the boss and can portal safely right before Remorse's Winter starts doing damage. We also have our Warlocks do Soulstones before the pull, as it's a 15-minute boss fight and you'll get a second use of Soulstones later in the fight. More on this when we get to phase 3 though. In phase 1, there are 5 mechanics you need to be aware of. Let's go through them one by one. The first ability is Infest. Infest will happen every 20 seconds. Infest deals a large amount of shadow damage to all players in the raid, and the targets will take more and more shadow damage every second while the debuff is active. Only way to remove this debuff is to heal every target to 90% or higher HP. This is where the 2 Disc Priests come in clutch with pre-shielding every single player in the raid, making it faster and easier to get people to above 90% HP. In our raids, we cover every single infest with either a DSAC or an Aura Mastery Shadow Resist. This ability will also happen in phase 2, but not in phase 3. If you do lose a player during the fight, make sure to not take a Soulstone or Combat Rest right into an infest, you will just get one shot. The second ability is Summon Grudge Ghouls. This ability happens on pull, and after that roughly every 30 seconds, and it summons 3 ghouls near Lich King. These ghouls have 750,000 HP each, and is passively being cleaved down by our Fury Warrior Unholy DKs, the Survival Hunter traps, and our Retribution Paladin. In our comp, these fellows doing a passive AoE is enough to kill them at a decent enough pace as to where no one has to stop their single side rotation to help with the AoE. These ghouls are being tanked mainly by one unholy DK, doing the most damage to them, and you want to try to keep them on one unholy DK to make it easier for the healers as well. Be wary of getting dazed though if you're the one tanking these ghouls, because you might be too slow for the next ability. The third ability is Summon Shadow Trap. Every 15 seconds, Lich King will summon a Shadow Trap beneath a random player. This can be anyone in the raid including tanks. Upon landing, the trap will activate after a couple of seconds. If anyone touches the trap, it will explode, and most of the time launch you and anyone close to it off the platform, and you cannot be resurrected if you die falling off the platform. So avoid this trap at all costs. Whenever a trap is on the tank, we always have the melee go left side around the boss to avoid it and not go through it. If you go through it and it's on the main tank and a DK is dazed by a ghoul, the trap will 100% be activated and all your melee players die. The fourth ability is the Summon Shambling Horror. The Shambling Horror will first spawn 10 seconds after the first ghoul wave, and after that every 60 seconds. Now, a lot of videos and guides I've seen all tell you the same thing. You need to phase the Lich King into phase 2 before the third Shambling spawns. And that's just wrong. My guild and I never had the DPS to skip the third Shambling Horror, and we have killed the Lich King during the PTR more times than I could count, so don't listen to this advice. The Shambling Horror is tanked by the off tank, and as you can see in the video being run in the background while I'm talking, and also by this picture, we are trying to form a triangle between the melee camp, rage camp, and the Shambling Horrors. Every 20 seconds, the Horrors will enrage, causing them to deal 200% more damage. This ability must be dispelled as fast as possible by your hunters. We run 2 hunters, so we have a hunter assigned to each Shambling Horror to dispel it as fast as possible. When a Shambling Horror reaches 20% or lower HP, they gain Frenzy, giving them a lot of attack speed and doubling their damage dealt. This is a good time for defensive cooldowns like Shield Wall, Pain Suppression, Hammer of Justice stuns, etc. As you can see in our videos, the way we handle the second and third Shambling Horror spawns is that we have one of our hunters angled in a position to distracting shot it when it spawns, so it comes in a good angle until the off tank taunts it off and the Shamblers are now facing the same direction. The reason as to why you want to do that is because about every 20 seconds the Shamblers will do a shockwave, dealing high damage that will almost always one-shot any non-tank hit by it. Now, these Shambling Horrors have 6 million HP each, and you're not supposed to have anyone dealing damage to them. So how do you kill them? And how you kill them is with our 5th and last ability in phase 1, which is Necrotic Plague. The 5th ability in phase 1, Necrotic Plague, happens about every 30 seconds in the fight during phase 1. Necrotic Plague deals 150,000 damage every 5 seconds for 15 seconds. And if the target it's on dies while affected by it, or if the effect just ends, the effect will gain an additional stack and jump to a nearby unit. If the effect is dispelled, it will also lose a stack and jump to a nearby unit. Whenever this effect jumps, Lich King will do 2% more stacking damage. This makes Lich King hit very hard at the end before you go into the intermission. How we deal with this plague is that with the triangle we're forming, both the range camp and melee camp will be able to reach the off-tank position where the Shambling is and get the spell before the 5-second passes. This is a great time to use rocket boots to ensure you get there in time. Dispel it as late as possible, unless you're closely watching the plague target. Just make sure to dispel it before 5 seconds have passed, or the player will die from the 150,000 damage tick. This will make the Necrotic Plague jump onto the Shambling Horror, and when it times out from the Horror, it will bounce back onto the off tank, which then can dispel himself to get it back onto the Horror again. And when all the Shambling Horrors are dead, you just dispel Necrotic Plague when no one is around you, and it will just be gone from the raid. That will conclude phase 1 and how we deal with this phase. We lost on pull in this phase, by the way, as we'll get a second loss for later in the fight, since the fight is just that long. Now, Let's move on to the first intermission. When the Lich King reaches 70% HP, he will go to the middle of the platform and start his cast of Remorseless Winter. We try to end phase 1 in a position where casters and melee are close to the edge of the platform, since Remorseless Winter deals damage to the entire center of the platform with unhealable damage. First intermission lasts 60 seconds. Warlocks who have pre-placed their portals can in this case refresh their dots and portal to safety right before the first take of damage happens to get as much damage as possible onto the Lich King. It is a very tight enrage timer, so every bit of damage really counts here. About 5 seconds after Remorseless Winter starts and every 20 seconds after that, a Raging Spirit will spawn from a random player. Each Raging Spirit has 4.15 million HP and will do an ability called Soul Shriek, which deals 45,000 damage in a cone in front of them on Heroic. Do not be in front of these mobs. A trick we found to be useful is that if you have any, for example, Tauren players in your raid who can use a Savior Deviate Delight, it makes the hitbox smaller if they do get targeted as a Raging Spirit, making the cone smaller as well, which is why our Blood DK main tank uses this instead of the Tauren default form. A total of 3 spirits will spawn, and you would like for at least 2 of them to be dead before the intermission is over. During the intermission, the Lich King will also cast an ability called Pain and Suffering, targeting a random member and anyone standing near the target, which is why we have created 3 camps total to make healing easier. Other than that, the Lich King will also spawn Ice Spears spawning from him, that fixate on a target and cause frost damage around that target. The person targeted by this should move and make sure you are not splashing damage upon the other raid members. The spears have a low HP pool of 54,000 HP, and we usually have our hunters take care of these, with the Boomy and Shadow Priest being backup. If the spears touch a player or reaches its target, everyone nearby will be knocked off the platform just like the Shadow Trap, so don't let that happen. If you have similar raid DPS to our raid, second phase will start with the third spirit being hopefully around 80% HP. The tank of your choice, we chose the Blood DK, will now take this Raging Spirit near the middle but face it away from the raid, so it can be multi-dotted and cleaved down during phase 2. You're not in a rush to kill it, but all dots as the focus damage on it is completely fine to kill it faster so the tanks can do some tank sculpting. Now though, we're ready for phase 2. Phase 2 is known as the Val'kyr phase, and this phase is probably the point where most skills will be wiping and stop for a while. 10 seconds after phase 2 starts, Infest will start happening like it did in phase 1. 15-ish seconds after phase 2 starts, you'll receive your first wave of Valkyrs. My advice for the Valkyrs is to have an auto marker for them and have some soft assigned DPS priority for them. You want to kill them evenly and spreading damage as evenly as possible. If a player is picked by a Valkyr and thrown off the edge, they cannot be resurrected again. 3 Valkyrs will spawn one by one every 45-ish seconds and grab a random target. They cannot target tanks. For this phase, Warlocks should have repositioned their portals at the edge, since a Valkyr grabbing them can be ignored since the Warlock can portal back onto the platform. Hunters can also disengage back onto the platform if a priest or mage gives them slowfall, so they have it when the Valkyr releases them. Doing it without slowfall is never going to be reliable from what we found. Have your warlocks and hunters standing away from the melee stacks of Valkyrs, so it's easy and fast to see that those Valkyrs are safe and not to be touched. Valkyrs need to be damaged to 50% before they will release the targets they picked up. How we specifically deal with the Valkyrs is we have an auto marker marking the Valkyrs with pre-assigned Hammer of Justice from our Paladins. So we Hammer of Justice into AoE stuns with Holy Wrath. We are ensuring them to be slowed the entire way with our one rogue, God bless him, doing crippling poison weapon swap with Shift on all 3 Valkyrs. If the rogue is grabbed, however, we will use pre-used Hunter slow traps to slow the Valkyrs, but these are not as reliable as the crippling poison. Slows like Warrior, AoE slow, etc. can be overridden and removed by any other slow, and we found it to not be useful at all for this. The tank should be kiting Lich King on top of the Valkyries that you are killing to ensure more cleave damage being dealt onto him as well. After all the stuns have happened, and if the slow isn't enough to break the people in the Valkyries free in time, you can use stuns that are not sharing DR with any other stuns, such as Cheap Shot and Infernals. If you have a singular Val'kyr that will not be killed in time, you can have the rogue pool energy to vanish and to Cheap Shot it. But if you have multiple, having pre-assigned Infernals is a great way to deal with the Valkyries, which is what we do. We use a raid icon marker as a stacking point in melee, where every single player in melee needs to be standing, except for the tanks of course. This ensures all the Valkyries are traveling in the exact same line, and therefore are much easier to cleave down. While the Valkyries from previous waves will go above the Lich King, they will start to heal to full HP using Life Siphon on random players. We found that the Valkyries have an aggro table still, and for example if a Warlock has aggro on too many, he can Soul Shatter, or another player can call for salvation from a Paladin, since having aggro from too many of them can hurt a lot when it's combined with stuff like Infest. Now, I wouldn't say that Valkyrs are the main reason people wipe here, but instead a new ability that will be present during Phase 2 and Phase 3, which is Defile. Around 35 seconds after Phase 2 starts and every 35 seconds after that, the Lich King will target a random raid member to cast Defile on them, and yes, this ability can go on the tanks. When the Defile cast ends, it will leave behind a big pool on the ground, and anyone touching the pool will make it grow really fast. If just one player is touching the pool will soon cover the entire platform and causing an instant wipe. How we handle Defile in my guild is to pre-spread before every Defile, making sure we can put it away from the raid, and if needed we can use a rocket boost to get outwitted faster. This ability has wiped my guild more times than I can count, so respect this ability and pre-spread for every Defile. Every 30 seconds, the Lich King will now also cast a new ability, the ability that will kill most tanks on this fight, which is Soul Reaper. This ability deals massive damage and applies a debuff on the tank that will deal damage over 5 seconds, dealing 70,000 shadow damage while also giving the Lich King 100% attack speed for 5 seconds. Having tank cooldowns for every Soul Reaper and massive healing from the Holy Paladins is required every time this ability happens. This is also a great time to tank swap if the Raging Spirit is dead at this point. Once the debuff is applied, just swap tank to not get the huge burst of damage on one target. And that's about it for Phase 2. Phase 2 ends as soon as the Lich King reaches 40% HP. He will, like at the end of Phase 1, run towards the middle, cast Remorseless Winter again. However, this time the outer platform is broken at the current point, so you have to get to the edge and be ready to jump onto the rebuilt platform. You can jump right before the Lich King finishes his cast to not take any taking damage on anyone in the raid from the Remorseless Winter. Now, for the second intermission, it's the same basis as the first intermission, except this time around 4 Raging Spirits was spawned instead of 3. I won't go into detail here, as this entire intermission is already explained in the first intermission. When the second intermission ends, you would like the first 2 Raging Spirits to be dead, and with the third one as low as humanly possible. And now we start Phase 3. At the start of Phase 3, about 10 seconds after the intermissions ended, Lich King will cast his first Harvest Soul. In our kills, we will always kill the 3rd Raging Spirit, but leave the 4th one alive for the off-tank to handle for the rest of the fight. Killing another Raging Spirit with 4 million HP just seems unnecessary, and you're already on a tight enrage timer. Off-tank handling 2 for the rest of the fight is a bit scary though, so don't do that, but you can do that if you want to. Now, before the first Harvest Soul happens, which will drain your entire raid and put you into a new room, you can use this time for all dot dashes to put your dots on the Lich King and the Raging Spirit. First off, let's cover what still happens in this phase. Soul Reaper still happens every 30 seconds on the tank, and Defile still happens about every 35 seconds from phase starting. Lich King will no longer cast Infest, so it's a lot less healing intensive on the entire raid. First, let's discuss the first of the two new abilities the Lich King will do in this phase. Like previously mentioned, the Lich King will do Harvest of Souls at the start of phase 3. He will suck you into what is referred to as the Frostmourne phase. In here, there will be wicked spirits in the air and bombs spawning randomly in the room and on players. The goal is to kill these wicked spirits, not letting any of them reach you, while dodging all the bombs falling from the air. How we handle this fight is to mark our tank with an easy to see raid marker. We choose the orange one, and he will guide us to victory while all the ranged kill stuff in the air, and healers can fully focus on healing while stacking on the orange marker. This phase lasts about 40 seconds, and you'll most likely see 4 of these rooms in your kill. After every room has ended, the Lich King will cast Defile on any raid member right away, so as soon as you get out, make sure to pre-spread instantly and keep the middle section clear, as we want to use this for kiting later. Try to pre-spread Defile to the side of the room that your off tank is not using for tanking the Raging Spirit. 10 seconds after getting out of the room, the first cast of Vile Spirits will happen, which is a new ability in phase 3. This ability is a channeled ability that summons 10 Vile Spirits, which have 270,000 HP each. Now, I know there are strategies out there used by guilds to burst these Vile Spirits down as soon as they spawn with AoE abilities, and therefore not moving Lich King at all, but this is not something we have practiced at all while we're not using this strategy. Our main tank is having the Lich King as close as possible to the edge to spawn the Vile Spirits here, and as soon as the cast is over, he will start running to the far opposite side of the platform. When Lich King reaches the other side of the platform, you would like the third Raging Spirit to be dead at this point so you can fully focus on the Lich King. Coming out of the first Frostmourne phase, we also choose to use our Bloodlust, as we found this time to be the best for it during phase 3. When you arrive at the other side, make sure to do a small pre-spread, and this is about the time the second Defile in phase 3 will arrive. The Vile Spirits that you spawned on the other side of the room will now fixate on random targets, and if they reach any player, they will explode for massive damage around them, approximately 36,000 damage in 25-man heroic. So, how do we deal with those spirits? Is that when we run to the other side of the platform, we had a hunter lay down a slow trap, and you trigger this trap with Lich King while running. Then we have the entire raid stack at Lich King as close as possible to the edge, while our Shadow Priest soaks the Vile Spirit with the Dispersion Glyph. If the Shadow Priest does not get all of them, we usually have our off tank, who is only tanking 1 Raging Spirit at this point, taunt 1 or 2, and soak it with a defensive. We also use backup soakers in the form of Feral Druid or Death Knights, as they can soak quite well with their own cooldowns, such as Bark Skin, Survival Instinct, Anti-Magic Shield, etc. A Retribution Paladin or Holy Paladin can also help with a Bubble Soak. While these have been soaked, Lich King would have channeled another set of Vile Spirits, and as soon as the previous wave of spirits have been soaked, the main tank will start running in a rapid phase as far as he can without briefing his healers to gain distance before the next Harvest Soul happens. When the next Harvest Soul happens, you want to yet again put the files in good position and keep going to the edge of the other side as soon as possible for soaking easier, and to spawn the next Vile Spirits goes to the edge again. This is basically the entire phase 3. We found that usually entering phase 3, while you have at least 5 minutes and 45 seconds ish left on the enrage timer, will allow you to always get 4 Frostmourne rooms, and after the 4th Frostmourne room, you can be kiting the boss around with taunts like you see in the video, while still killing him even though he's actually enraged. If you don't make this 5 minute 45 ish second timer, he will enrage before the 4th Harvest Soul and one-shot your entire raid. And that's about it for phase 3. During the most of the PTR, it was possible to use stuff like combat resist and soul stones to die prior to harvest souls, and then resurrect and do full damage into a Lich King while your raid was still playing the Frostmourne room. Blizzard made a custom change, even though there's videos even back from 2010 showcasing this strategy. That the Lich King is now taking 99% reduced damage together with his Raging Spirit during the Frostmourne room, making it a not so valid strategy anymore, although it can still be used by Affliction Warlocks, and I will explain why. If you die on the Harvest Souls by removing your buffs and spamming life tap a bit before, or simply standing still inside the Frostmourne room and dying to bombs, then taking your Soulstone outside will allow you to buff up with necessary things like Drums of Kings, Stormful Wild, while pre-stacking 3 stacks of Shadow Embrace with all dots up and pre-casting an Infernal, giving you the ability to do as much damage as possible with only lacking your full buff as soon as the raid is starting to kite him. Now, this is not necessary at all, and if you do it or not is up to you, but it's something you can do. Phase 3 ends when the Lich King reaches about 10.4% HP, and he will cast Fury of the Frostmourne to kill your entire raid. About 2 minutes and 40 seconds later, Tyrion will resurrect your entire raid, and you can now finish off the last 10% of its HP. And that will conclude the Lich King. I hope I remembered to mention everything that I find important for this fight. I know this video probably ended up being incredibly long, but I feel like this is justified for a fight this hard, going in depth of what we do every single phase, and I think it should help a lot of guilds or pucks out there. If you do have any questions about this and I didn't cover it in the video, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try to get to it ASAP. I may however be super busy with the release of ICC and not have as much time for YouTube comments right now, so instead come say hello on twitch.tv/TechnoTV and ask any questions while I'm live. You may also join my Discord to find my UI or ask any questions. It is linked in the description of the video. Best of luck in Icecrown Citadel to all of you, and thank you for watching my video.